We'll go ahead with the next session, which is titled Content Distribution, OTT and Theatrical Coexistence. The moderator for this session is Akshay Rathi, who is director of the award-winning Ashirwad Theatres. Panelists are Devendra Deshpande, he's CEO of Friday Filmworks. Devendra has over 20 years of experience in media, content, and business development. And Rajesh Mishra, who is Executive Director and Group CEO, UFO Movies. Rajesh has more than 30 years of experience in media, films, television, and print. I'd like to welcome them all on stage.
Very good afternoon to all of you, and truly a pleasure to be here to speak about something that's very pertinent and relevant in this day and age. I'm sure all of us have been witness to this debate that was happening in the middle of the pandemic when theaters were shut. The streaming platforms had a bit of a dream run in that sense because everyone was locked into their homes, and the only recreation people had was to watch stuff on streaming. And that's when the debate that was happening, or the conversation that was happening all around us, was streaming versus theatrical. Enough time has passed since, and I think we've all been able to agree upon the fact that that debate was truly relevant in a lot of ways, where what really is the reality of the day is what you see here, where the coexistence of streaming versus theatrical is the new reality, where both these platforms are actually a boon for content creators like Devendra and a whole lot of others who are operating in the markets in India, and facilitating a scenario where stories of all kinds, of all sizes and scale can be told in the most meaningful manner and made to reach out to the widest possible audience domestically as well as internationally. So let's open this debate by, with Devendra, who's representing Friday Filmworks. I'm sure a lot of you have witnessed some of their movies, starting from a Wednesday, Baby, Special Chabbis, MS Dhoni, The Real Story, shows like Khaki, Special Ops, the recently released Freelancer. So that's some terrific content that they've made, and they've been making content for streaming as well as for theatrical. So the point of view from you, Devendra, first. The last 3 years, this trajectory from the emergence of the pandemic, right, where that conversation changed from versus to, coexistence, to how they work in sync. As a content creator who's creating for both the mediums, how do you think, where has the dust settled in this day and age, and how is it, such an exciting time for storytellers to be a part of this business?
I think even earlier too, so pandemic, we had this lean period between March 2020 to, the end of 2021. But before that, OTTs, made its presence felt from 2016 onwards. So if you take that, 2 years preceding to that, and the current, I think it's pretty much the same. They've always been very, very complementary. If you look at films and as well as the series, as well as the OTT content, they've been quite complementary to each other, right? Movies, you would go for an experience which was with your, family, friends, very, very spectacle driven. As far as OTT content goes, it was more about, either solo viewing or binge watch with family. And it was more about, discovery of content that you would want, right? So for instance, a lot of content which you otherwise wouldn't see it as a theatrical, would definitely find its place in OTT. And the discovery can happen from anywhere, right? So prime time pretty much changed to my time, that way. So yes, it was quite complementary, except that, with OTT, you just have more stories to tell and many more formats to experiment with.
Sure. Coming to you, Rajeshji, theatrical again as a medium over the last couple of years has seen quite a trajectory, almost as dramatic as some of the nicer movies that we see, where there was a conversation about the death of the medium. And then suddenly in this year, you've had 3 of the highest grossing Hindi films of all time released between Pathan, Jawan and Gadar. You also have a lot of regional movies that are firing like you would never imagine. In fact, this is the year, very eerily and interestingly, wherein multiple linguistic fraternities, you've had the highest grossing film of all time for each one of them released this year. So your thoughts on this bounce back that has happened from what was, seemingly a death knell to possibly, in terms of box office and revenues, the greatest year in the history of Indian cinema?
So I'm really glad that the topic of discussion is coexistence. Otherwise, it was always, is this the end of theatrical? Is cinema done with? And this is typically a cycle which you see with any new emerging technology. When news channels came in, they said newspapers are done with now. If you can see and view everything in actual real time, why would you want to read it in the papers next day? And there was a lot of discussions happening at that time whether the newspapers are going to survive. Same thing happened with audio also. When CDs came in, then MP3 players came in. Is this the death of music? Is this? So technology will always keep throwing up newer and newer opportunities. Opportunity in one area could be a challenge in another area, but it doesn't mean that it is going to kill the earlier technology. The earlier technology only dies when the net contribution of that technology becomes negative in the equation. I'll give you an example. I represent a company, UFO Movies India Limited. We are a digital cinema company. What we actually do is we digitize the copies of the films and deliver digital copies of the films to the cinemas. So what we have done, the entire roll that we used to distribute to cinemas, that has been eliminated from the equation by our technology. Now, what has happened is the roll itself used to, I'm just taking 2 minutes to give you perspective of what I'm talking about. The roll itself used to cost 60,000 rupees to make. Out of that, the actual cost of the polyester roll was 50,000 rupees, which was not a reusable item. The moment you made it digital, it suddenly became redundant. The cost of digital print came down from, the cost of a print came down from 60,000 to 10,000 rupees. You could deliver to 6 cinemas instead of 1 cinema. So 500 cinemas, which was the peak, now translates into 3,000 cinemas for you. So coming back to what I was saying, that net contribution of the physical prints became negative in the equation. That technology died. But cinemas, as long as they will keep contributing to the experience, to what you are doing, it's never going to die. Cinemas are a concept where you take out time, you take out the money, you take out the effort. It's an appointment viewing. You go there, it's not something you see on a whim or a spur of a notice period. These are vastly different mediums to be associated with. I come from television background. We always used to say television is a medium of close-ups. I mean, he's a production guy, so he knows this thing much better than me. And cinemas are spectacles, which you see on a larger screen. We see a larger canvas, a larger picture. Two totally different mediums. They are basically inherently different in design, the way I see it. You can't really watch an Avatar on a 7-inch screen or even a 65-inch screen. Not every movie is going to be Avatar, but films are a larger than life entertainment scenario, and that is what the whole thing is about. When we came out of the pandemic, it was a difficult time, and that was a time when OTTs were trying to bring in newer and newer content because cinemas were closed. They were doing premieres on the OTT platforms to bring in new content. Somehow I think that is counterintuitive to the whole process. Because when you buy a film without seeing its run in the cinemas, it is something which you're taking a punt on. Many of the programmers or the buyers at the OTT platforms, they have never possibly seen the films also. And they take a punt that, okay, this is the pedigree of the production house, this is the pedigree of the director, and you take out. There is no price finding mechanism over there. From last year, I think what has happened is OTT platforms have also started insisting that you do a theatrical release first, and then we'll buy your film. This serves two purposes. One, the film comes to the theater. Second, the OTT platform also is able to arrive at the correct price. They don't underpay it or they don't overpay also. Many times the deals are now, I believe, linked to the performance of the film, of how it has done theatrically. So these are the things which encourages us more and makes my conviction more this thing that these two mediums, while audiovisual in nature, they have an inherent coexistive nature to it. When you see films, films have uh, okay, let me put it another way. I think OTT for me, at least at the personal level and what I have read worldwide, is a format for large format, long format shows. I don't die to see a movie on a OTT platform. But the moment I hear about a 3 series, 4 season good series there, that is what interests me. So this platform is very, very focused and by its very nature attuned towards long format shows. Films will always be the icing on the top, cherry pick over there. They will not be the driver content over there. That is what is.
So, if I can just interject, I mean, just a minor bit of add-on there. So even today, when OTTs, sign up for films, right, which are going to see the theaters, but they haven't, there's already a base price attached, right? So that's what, and they haven't seen the theatrical run as yet. Of course, depending on performance, there are certain added incentives, and maybe there could be some minor penalties as well. So for instance, a good star-cast film the deal might get signed at 100, and then the upside could be 120, or there could be 90. But you already have a base price attached to it.
Sure. So talking about the distribution strategy, very often, Devendra, it's driven by the storytelling style that goes into play. To give you an example, one of the most iconic films we've had in recent times, Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Padmavat, right? On the same story, there's been a television show. On the same, story, there have been books that have been written. And originally, if you look at the seed of that story, it's actually a poem. So there have been different storytelling styles for the same story, which have really dictated the medium of distribution and creation. Let's have you speak a little bit about those demarcations and the factors that make you choose a storytelling style to suit a certain format between streaming and theatrical.
I mean, you're talking about us as a production house, or how?
As a content creator, generally.
Okay, why would we go for one versus the other? Is that what you're trying to
How
say?
do you really choose your storytelling style for a particular story to suit a particular medium?
Okay, so I think medium basically becomes ancillary. First of all, we know whether this story, which is the best format to tell a particular story, right? Movies, you would just have to be very, very crisper. You have a finite duration that's available. Of course, there are movies which can go into, part one and part two, because, the story demands that, right? If it's a spectacle. But other than that, series is more about, compare a 150-minute versus a 400-minute. Okay, and then there are stories, which lend itself to, those 4 minutes. You can't crunch it down into 150 minutes. You'll be doing gross injustice to that, right? Case in point being special ops, right? So we've done a thriller like Baby, and then there is a special ops. One is that special ops was itself seen as a franchise. You will have multiple spin-offs. You will also have some of the backstories. And these are all thought about earlier. Of course, you would execute it depending on the success. So I think that's the primary point, that there are some stories which will lend itself beautifully to a series format and might not be the best way for a theatrical cinematic release. Coming to then again a difference between a direct to digital cinema and a direct to theatrical, the contours change. You would see a lot of films, which are direct to digital, which great marketing, lot of discovery, lot of push by the platform. People across will, start discovering that. The moment you want to get the same one into a theatrical, then, you will really have to emphasize on who's the cast, how is it marketed, how is it mounted, the timing. 52, just a case in point, you have 40 weeks for a good theatrical, and choose a weekend between that, versus, 365 days for a digital. So yeah, there are those multiple, but primarily to answer your question, I think there are, once you read the story that, is it franchisable, is it not franchisable?
Got it. Rajesh, coming back to you, oldest topic in the book at discussions in forums like these has been the low density of cinema screens that exist in this country. Now, of course, one side of the debate is that for a lot of films, we don't even manage to fill up all the seats in the existing theatrical ecosystem that we have. The other side is that there's such a huge market that just doesn't have screens. So about this opportunity that exists for growth of screen count in India, one, what do you think is the potential for this 1.4 billion strong market that India is? And second, what do you think are the ways to really take screens to these new or emerging or virgin markets that don't have them at all?
So this is a very interesting scenario, and which we see in India. Uh, when we started digitizing the cinemas in say 2500, there were around 9,600 screens at that point of time. Today, there are 9,500 screens after almost 18 years of operation. And after almost 5,000 multiplex screens have opened up. So what is very evident is that cinemas are also closing down at the same time. Single screens closed down, multiplexes also, some few of them closed down, but largely it's the single screens which closed down. And out of this universe of theaters, almost 55 or 56% of the screens are in the 5 southern states. Those 5 states account for 56% of the theater density in the country. Rest of the 44% is spread across the entire India over there, with north being very, northeast and Kashmir side being very sparsely populated with cinemas. So what we also did was we did a deep dive into this thing to see the opportunity over there. In every forum you will find ministers and secretaries coming and saying that India should become the next China. It's funny. It's, the way people speak without, any sense of the ground reality. China was adding 10,000 screens every year. In 18 years, we are static, and we have degrown by 100 screens at that point of time. So we started to analyze the situation, and what we found was that if I leave out the south states, which are densely populated, what we did was we drilled down with the pin codes, let us say. So there are, say, 20,000 pin codes in the country, postal pin codes. And cinemas are present in around 4,400 pin codes in the country. 16,000 pin codes are not serviced by any cinema. And when I say service means in a radius of 5 kilometers around the place. There are no cinemas. So where is the families and the audiences going to go? At least the men in the smaller towns and places, they would, on a bike or a bus or a tractor, whatever way they want, whenever they want to see a film, they will land up in the nearest town and go and see it over there. But the ladies of the house do not go. The elderly and the, feeble people, they are not able to travel. Children definitely do not travel. So what is happening is you lose out a huge chunk of the people who do not really have access to cinema. So if there is a village or area, catchment area, which has 20,000 people over there, barely 1,500 would be consuming cinema in the nearby catchment areas. Rest, without having access to a cinema hall, they would either just wait for it to show up on television or just Doordarshan. So this is a opportunity that's parked in the country everywhere, where you don't need very big cinema houses. You need small cinemas which can cater to this very latent demand. And the potential, Akshay, over there we feel is around 30,000 screens at least can be added to the country in a very easy manner. The thing to do over here is that you have to grow the model on a. So what we are working on is we are working on a system where we are creating some cinemas like this as a prototype at our own cost. We have not approached any government or we have not approached anyone for help on this thing. So we said, let us put our money where our mouth is. I'll create 10, 20 cinemas like this, put it to test as a test case, and if it works, then you can franchise it out to others. So people have money, people have this thing. At one of the meetings, a government secretary asked me, when I explained this model to him, he says, what can we do to help? I said, the biggest help you all can do is like stay away from this. It is a highly regulated medium. Please don't regulate it further. You need to deregulate it, make it simpler. This industry survives despite you, not in spite of you. So, people are scared to open a cinema in this country. Akshay is an exhibitor, he'll bear it with me. The biggest fear is, how do I get a license? How do I complete the formalities? When we talk to a person, he says, I'm willing to put in a cinema, but will you arrange for the license? Will you handle the regulation part of it, So I said, please, sir, the help that I need from you is to make your people stay away from the cinemas. Unki jaan chhod do. They will survive, they will flourish. There is so much over-regulation. And contextually, I would like to say, even on OTT and theatrical, just look at the difference in the censorship levels. It's an unfair advantage that the OTTs are enjoying over here right now. A medium which is so regulated has a censor board which certifies films on top of it. Most ridiculous thing I see is national anthem se pehle censor certificate aata hai. And who supplied the censor certificate? This national anthem, films division. A government body playing out the national anthem supplied by them needs a censor certificate. Right? And what are we talking about on OTT platforms? I don't need to spell it out. So, that's an unfair advantage. But even I'm also fine with that because it's chalti bhasha hai. We speak this type of language, most of us, and we hear it, it's part of our this thing. So somewhere I think some parity will need to be brought in from the OTT and the theatrical. I'm not saying regulate OTT, but the way to do it was with deregulate cinemas. Let them have self-certification, why not? I'm not saying you should regulate OTTs. Everyone is grown up. Today, pornography is available on mobile phones. Your child is smarter than you. He knows how to access the sites which I can't even get around to, They know the VPN and proxy server and all that, and I don't understand that still. So this is something which is a big bane which the film industry faces over here. That needs to be done away with. Every forum that I speak to, I tell them. Censor board called me for some suggestions on this thing. That was my first suggestion. I said, get out of the way. Why are you all censoring films? In this age where content on OTT, on YouTube, on porn sites is available so freely, you regulate those things, control those things. Cinema is as it is, his whole license is at stake. First of all, when the producer makes a film, and if he's making it for theatrical and he plans to certify it as 13 plus, let us say, he will make the film according to that. He will keep that in mind. Why do you need to police everything? Why does someone need to do this moral policing? So, you take out these equations, you take out the government bodies, you bring in models which support long-term rollout of large-scale this. So, 30,000 cinemas is not going to be an easy task. But we are targeting only 30. If I am successful with those 30, it will open up the way for 30,000 in the future. That is our target over here.
That's very interesting. So one aspect, of course, is the kind of policy that supports the emergence of screens. The other thing that really drives the growth of this sector, and of course, I think what Rajesh pointed out is fairly true, where I think Indian entrepreneurs are truly enterprising enough to roll out infrastructure if there's enough incentive, one, on the count of policy. The second one, both of you I know to be car junkies, so let me give you an analogy there. Now, whether it's a Mercedes or a Maruti, it doesn't run without fuel. And a car certainly doesn't run with aviation fuel, neither does an aircraft, run on petrol. One thing that will really drive the growth of exhibition infrastructure, especially in the markets where it doesn't exist, tier 2, tier 3 towns, is content that's relevant to the palette of that audience. While the Tamil and Telugu fraternities generally are known to do that, probably the reason why the density of screens there is so much more higher Hindi as a fraternity is often accused of being very urban and elitist in terms of its storytelling style. You have a lot of movies that are more urban phenomena than, than successes in every nook and corner of the country. Case in point being a movie that came very recently, Gadar. Nobody saw that sort of success coming, and especially from those tier 2, tier 3 towns. Will they now, with the kind of patterns that we are seeing, be the re-emergence of those more universal films that really cater to the grassroots in that sense? A content creator's point of view on that?
You want to take that first?
I'm not a content creator. I usually facilitate the content that goes into the cinemas, but by virtue of that, we end up releasing around 25 to 27 films on a weekly basis in all languages and versions and all across India. Every week we see this release happening. And the amount of content that is happening has no relation with the quality of content that comes in. A lot of content is actually junk that comes out. I don't know what economics work for the producers in those areas. Somewhere they are making films just for subsidies also. Somewhere they are making films because they are new, they want to cut their teeth. Let's burn 2-3 crores, understand the business. So those things also work. Somewhere it becomes sometimes pattern. Suddenly Marathi films started doing well, so a lot of Marathi films started opening up. So the constant joke we feel is that the biggest hurt that can happen to a regional industry is one sleeper hit that comes up. It paves the way for 100 other failures in the future, that people just start following. One Sairat made 100 Marathi films which were not working at that point also. Bottom line here, my only take on this is that what we have seen across the years is there is a very, no matter how we put it, there is a classy and massy divide. Wo hai. It is something which is very, very prevalent. But the beauty of it is a massy film can work in a classy area, market, not necessarily the other way around. So a classy film, if it is good, it might just not connect to the masses, and it might not be that big an area. So you would like the film, you will appreciate the film. The few 100,000 odd people who go to see it would appreciate the film also, but it never make it a hit. So that differentiation of classy and massy is something which needs to be worked upon. And I think South has got that formula right over the years. They also have classy areas and they have higher paying audiences, but they somewhere connect to that base mass connect jo unka hota hai. The pakad that we say in the industry that the South film has. I am North Indian, but still I see that these people, they have this grip in the market. North, we have started to get caught up with the phenomena of multiplex film. Ye multiplex film hai. That's nonsense. A multiplex film need not necessarily work in the multiplexes also. Forget the lower single screens or the lower urban areas. Films that need to connect, that is very important. My personal refrain, again, not being from the production side, I can take this high moral ground, is that somewhere we don't spend enough on our writing departments. They don't get paid enough, research is not done enough, or whatever happens, somewhere we are losing the plot on that front. You see films, good premise, good actors, decent budget spent, and then last half an hour, suddenly they are all over the place and the end credits start rolling. And then you said, shit, what did I end up watching? What was this about, Maybe a good pair of eyes and ears could have done a better doctoring and report job of that. I wish really we started spending more on this rather than spending 100 crores to an artist who has virtually no guarantee for you today in the cinema. Your star power is what? Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, all these star guys. What was the star power? That they will bring in the audience on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Irrespective of the film or the marketing, they will bring in the audience to that. That Friday-Saturday window has come down to Friday, and now it is for the first 2 shows. Beyond the first 2 shows, you are waiting for the WhatsApp on the recommendations from your groups or the reviews to decide. So the star power is disappearing, which I personally think is a very good thing to happen. It will democratize the industry. It will create an era where stories work, where people will go to see stories, will go to see films, irrespective of who the star is. And that could be the best thing that can ever happen to something like this. And this is where there is going to be a huge cross-pollination between OTT and theatrical. And classic case example would be Oh My God 2. I don't think it was a Akshay Kumar film. It was a Pankaj Tripathi film. It was purely a Pankaj Tripathi film. Akshay was barely in that film for 10 minutes, I would assume. Pankaj Tripathi carried the entire film throughout. So, a good story told well always works. Simple formula.
Sure. You want to
Sorry, yeah.
object to that, agree with that? Because we've just been told that time's almost up and we've taken questions from the audience, but go.
Yeah, I have been trying to figure this out myself. What is Masi, what is classy? So for instance, was Pathan Masi or Pathan, I mean, was it an urban thing or was it for the rural masses, right? And why? Because, if you look at topic, it was espionage, it was gizmo, it was high tech, everything. And finally, I think it's, maybe we are actually complicating a very simple thing or maybe simplifying a very complicated phenomena. I think there is pull content, there is push content, right? The formula is very simple. I think there's a good story, you would mount it with, the right characters, the right actors. Of course, I agree on the writing part. A lot of time the writing falters. Also agree on the fact that, okay, one would always look at it as a weekend phenomena, right? And hence you would take the right stars so that, they would actually drive the entire aura of spectacle. You would get audiences inside. 2-3 days or the weekend down the line, the movie would. And with all due respect, Akshay, I know you had seen Gadar 2 coming because a month before the release, Akshay had predicted that that's going to be a huge sleeper hit. But again, with all due respect, Gadar 2 is an aberration. I'm sure there would be a lot of movies that will again be done on that theme and probably might not, do well. So yeah, I think finally let's boil it down to good cinema, bad cinema. From our own example, I'll tell you, A Wednesday as a theme was as urban as it can get, right? It was a very, very Bombay-centric, shot in Bombay, put in Bombay, but found its cult audiences over a period of time. I don't have the numbers right now on whether it did well in the B centers, C centers or not. I'm sure being a new film, it did not even get a B center, C center release. And hence my counter question to both of the gentlemen sitting on my left will be that if we do a movie with lesser known stars, will Akshay offer us the screens? Will Rajesh ji give us all the distribution support? If yes, then probably, yeah, there is hope.
So if that's also directed at me, let me quickly take that before opening this up. So Shubmangal Savdhan, right? Movie based in rural India, tale of people in rural India, didn't work in rural India. Dhoom 3 was shot entirely in Chicago and it worked across the length and breadth of the country. So it's not about where the story is based, it's about whether the storytelling style appeals to the length and breadth of the country, and that hopefully answers it. But let's now give it to the audience and take questions with raise of hands.
Only one example, just to put things over here, is where the film is based really, for me, doesn't make a difference. It could be based in a rural India or a smaller city like Kanpur or something. The story will grow on you and it works, otherwise it doesn't work. I mean, Queen is a class example of something like that, where it could be shot, but it had this very urban, semi-urban, this thing. But if you see a film like, say, Thappad, I don't know how many people of you have seen that. It didn't work in the rural areas. Because one, the story is about a wife who gets slapped by her husband and then she takes offense to it and it drags it up to a divorce level thing. In North India, the women themselves were not identifying with something like this. I mean, there were interviews. I mean, it's not like something I'm raking up from this thing that, what is the big deal about it? I mean, theek hai, ho jata hai. Domestic violence, it's a part of life. So, good, bad, ugly, the situation was it didn't work in the smaller centers. That had a more urban appeal where the women were more liberated, more educated, different for freedom. So films get divided on these lines. Films get divided on geographical things, on languaging, on accents that they follow and all those things. No one has the formula. Yashraj doesn't have the formula. They will not have the formula, or anyone else will have the formula. It's a gut level thing that the director producers take on. This is the risk that everyone keeps taking. That's how the industry survives. Out of 100 films, 90 flop, 10 survive, 10 make enough money or make profits. But that is what keeps the meter ticking over the industry across the years. One good film takes up the thing. Of course, OTT economics are different, but still it is there.
Hopefully we are releasing our 10th one next year. So fingers crossed.
Right. Let's do questions from the audience with a raise of hand. If we can have the mic going out. Yes, I see a bunch of people at the back, one after the other.
Yeah, hi, I'm Arun Kant from Coimbatore. And I've written few research articles about the dark side of OTT and the top 10 scams of theatrical workflows. To put everything in a nutshell, I just wanted to quickly, address few things and also ask your opinion about it. These OTT platforms have today made filmmaking as a telecom industry and not a film industry because they pay based on the minute streamed. But I'm not making an IST phone call, I'm making a movie. So that's one issue. And point number two is in theatrical workflows, the VPF is a big scam. It's just an EMI of the projector being renamed as VPF, virtual print. What logic is that? It's a copy paste, Control C, Control V, and they make us pay every week, every month, as if that's another scam. Yeah. And the third scam, the third biggest scam is like we need at least even for a birthday party we plan 10 days before, and we invite people, and theaters confirm a show only 3 days before. And 3 days is not enough for us. We don't have enough manpower and the advertising cost to tell the whole world that our movie is releasing. And without confidence, we cannot advertise. And if they don't give a show, our advertising cost goes waste. So there's no release regulation committee. And the fourth scam is about, as you address, it's Book My Show. When train tickets, bus tickets can be sold in hundreds of websites. IRCTC, Clear Trip, Make My Trip, hundreds of places. Somebody wants to travel from Coimbatore to Mumbai. The train does not advertise every day. We just know that we need to go to any portal. So tickets has to be sold on hundreds of websites. In fact, my movies, I started selling tickets on my own website. And I told them my tickets will be sold on my own website. And I have the customer database. I feel without customer database, no industry can survive. Even a guy who makes a small mixie grinder has a customer database. Next model, he sends a push notification. We don't have access to any customer database, any behavioral workflow of any people. So we cannot advertise to our target audience. So it has to, as you said, there has to be a common portal where we can address to every single person who's a movie goer. So the API has to be shared because Book My Show lobbies with every single theater, pays them 30 lakhs upfront. And I'm not saying this, Ernst & Young reports has said this, that investigation is going on. So that lobby has to go away. Theaters and OTTs have to commit themselves, because they're also running a business, they have to commit themselves to marketing the film. That's why I'm speaking so fast so that I know you have given me only 1 minute. Okay, so when are these scams going to get eradicated?
Sorry,
Which are actually stopping the small filmmakers from growing.
Okay, I didn't understand your first scam at all. When you said that OTTs pay on the duration of the film, what is that scam, if you can elaborate?
For example, Amazon Prime pays quickly. 10 seconds. 10 seconds, the world will be beautiful.
Manoj, give me 10 seconds to answer that. Buddy, as an exhibitor, let me answer this about the showcasing very, very quickly. Trust me when I say this, I get absolutely no pleasure in not giving a particular producer shows and giving a particular, producer an X number of shows. Programming is purely based on one law of economics, which is the law of demand and supply.
Then when there is no demand, why am I not able to price my own movie the way I want? Why should Rajinikanth's movie and my movie be the same price when there's no demand for mine?
Sure.
I think, yeah.
Okay, Will. To put an end to that, please visit artknowledge.in. I've written research articles on the scams of both these. artknowledge.in. there ends the topic. Thank you.
I think we'll end this session. Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Devendra. And thank you, Akshay. I'll just call on stage Kavita Sharma. She's Senior Director, Nuremberg Messe, to hand over the mementos to the panelists.